Hey, what's up, comrades? So we started playing Ender Lilies. I think that's what it's called. It's like a metrovania game. Um, my pause is that it's a it's hard. It's like one of those things where it's like I could say it draws inspiration from like the Dark Souls style of game. I know I've read that somewhere, but at the same time, like I played like old Metroid and Castlevania games, and like that's just when you leave the screen and then come back and monsters regenerate. That's just like how shit works. It's not like that's not like just how like FromSoft games function, right? In fact, very specifically, FromSoft games like monsters will be gone forever until you like use a thing or die, and then when you drop things, they're like gone forever. This is more. This is literally just like a Metrovania game. It's like a Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I felt like if you're looking at like a 2D side-scrolling game and you're thinking, "Hey, I know what this is. This is like a Dark Souls but side-scrolling." Then you're really looking at like Salt and Sanctuary or whatever the sequel to that one is, or like Blasphemous, and then the sequel to that. I feel thus far. This thing so far is pretty straightforward. So you're Lily, and Lily, who's Lily? Lily's the priestess of white, or the white priestess. And we start the game off. I played that little like introduction. That's like the story. That's all we're given. It's like we see her like hanging out, having a good time, chillaxing, and then like rain and shit, and then she's sad hippopotamus. And then after that, once we start the game, we get like this spirit is like, "Oh, hey, you're alive. That's good to know." No, and I figure this is one of those games where it's just like the story's not really that important, and I could figure it out. So I was like, "Oh, I'm going to play this in Italiano, just for good measure and for practice sake." But real quick, I found out that no, there's actually a lot more story stuff going on here than I initially imagined. So I went back to English so I can like fully understand like all the esoteric phrases it's using. Now my Italian is not good, so that's also a factor. But usually I can like I was playing. I played other games in the past, like Witcher, not the Witcher trilogy, like the one that's like a card game with like the woman. I was able to play that in Italian and understood most of it. But this, I was like, I feel like I'm already completely lost about what's going on. And even in English, it's one of those games where it's like, oh yeah, this is not much less confusing. Anyway, so the spirit that awakens you is the Umbral Knight, and you don't have like a lot of firm grasp on all your memories. You're just like laying on like this altar essentially in this church, or the girl is with white hair, and he's like, your kingdom, the kingdom's like completely destroyed, and the blight's everywhere, and you don't remember any of this, do you? All right, well let's go check it out. So we check it out. So we just wander around in these halls. It's very like Simon's Quest or Castlevania Symphony of the Night or like Metroid Dread or whatever. It's a Metrovania. It's pretty straightforward. You do find these like messages on the ground that kind of give you like some lore bits, but it's done in a very like, in my opinion, shitty Dark Souls way. And not that Dark Souls is shitty, because I feel like the way Dark Souls does it is much better. It's one of those things where like for some reason FromSoft is like really nailed like environmental storytelling. This game, on the other hand, has not really nailed it, and it's trying real hard. But at the same time, I'm just like more. It's like I'm confused. I feel like in Dark Souls, and when I say Dark Souls, I mean like Dark Souls 1 through 3, Bloodborne, Elden Ring, Sekiro's like the story is very straightforward, so it's not hard. But in those kind of games, it's like obscure, but like I get it. like you walk into an area and you're looking around, and then you read some item descriptions and you have like a conversation with some NPCs, and you're like, all right, I get the gist of what's going on here. This is like, I'm reading a bunch of stuff and I'm like, I don't understand any of this like gibberish bullshit that it's like telling me. Right? Like if you just ignore all the stuff you pick up and read, then the story kind of makes sense. And that's what I'm mostly going to base this on. I'm not really going to talk about all that, like the gibberish extra writing. But okay, so the Ember Knight wakes you up and we start moving about. What we do learn is that from like the knight's commentary and from reading some of these notes, I get like there's this blight that came with like the rain and it blighted the water, and then people turn into these monsters, and these monsters like they regenerate if after you kill them, and they literally regenerate after you go to like a bench. I mean, they literally regenerate once you leave the room and come back. So it's not like there's something about like if you die or whatever, the monsters will be reborn. And I'm like, they're literally, I leave the room and come back. It's just like a normal game where like you leave the room and come back and there's monsters. You level up. I don't know if the leveling up really does anything. It seems like it gives me very incremental amounts of like stuff. You have a healing thing where you can pray thus far 3 times, like when you start. And that takes a little bit of time to pray, and then that heals you for a certain amount. And then you can use your the Umbral Knight attack, which is just like a regular 3 combo sword attack, unlimited amount of times, which is important because as you get other spirits that join you, they tend to have limited amount of uses, and they also tend to have charge times. He does not. This is like your main weapon. You're just gonna go to town. You do get some consumables. Consumables you don't use per se. You have to wait till you get to like a bonfire, essentially, which are like these benches, or like they're not always benches. They're like areas where you can rest. I can't remember. The Umbral Knight calls them something. And when you rest, then you can like equip new spirits, enhance your the spirit attacks. You can fast travel. It's pretty quickly. Like that, you don't start off with any of this stuff, but you get it all pretty fast. You can fast travel, and then you can play like a boss rush mode, essentially, which every time you beat a boss, you can go play like its purified form or whatever, and it's a little bit harder. And according to the game, like if you play them at different times in the game, they are like even harder, and they give you like more rewards or whatever. So if you just want to if you're good at killing a few bosses, you can like grind out some experience and stuff. But again, when you gain levels, you don't get like, okay, now I can raise stats or whatever. You just kind of like gain a level and get like incremental stat boosts. You also find these things like as the Priestess of White, you can find pieces of your like amulet or necklace or whatever. And every time you do, you get like 5 extra hit points. And then you can pick up relics that increase stats and stuff. And then some of the spirits come with extra abilities. So the main Umbral Knight, he gets to attack, and then the first boss actually, Sigrid, is a priestess who is supposed to be a guardian of Lily, and you fight her. She's got 2 phases. The first phase I thought was actually harder. It's she spins around and has like this not a morning star, like a flail or something. It's like the ball on the chain with the thing. Anyway, so she spins around and does attacks with that. It's not super hard. And then the second phase, she turns into like this monster with claws that does like a diving attack. And like that was much, I felt like that was much easier to like dodge around and fight. I didn't die against her either. I already played it the regular time, and then I played the purified form to see what was going on. And then I looked it up because I was like, this didn't fucking feel like, it just felt like it was a little bit harder, but that's it. I don't get any rewards or unlock anything. And it's like, apparently not. Like apparently if you play it later on in the game, because like I started off in like chapter 1, like when you press the start button, and then it said chapter 2 at some point. There was no like, you are now in chapter 2 of the game. It was just like time goes on, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I guess I'm in chapter 2. Cool. So after you beat Sigrid, you gain her spirit, but you purify her from the blight, and then you get like a little backstory. Fun. So again, it's just kind of reiterates what she said, but you get to see her and Lily, and this is when you learn that the girl's name is Lily, because up to this point you had no idea. You've lost your memory, and you and the Umbral Knight talk about like, oh, your name's Lily. That's good to know. And then the Umbral Knight says some crazy stuff about like, I am always with the Priestess in White. I am perennial to it. I will always be there. And then he's like, oh, you look shocked by me saying that. It is an interesting thing. And I'm like, thank you for being obscure. Fucking game. Oh, Jesus. On that note, we'll take a aside from the story and just say the controls are tight. I have no issue with them whatsoever. Like I can play the game. I'm playing it on a controller on my PC, and like no issues whatsoever. There's a dodge mechanic, and it works. The attacks work. Like if I'm dying, which I died a few times against like regular mobs, and that was just me being like trying to rush through something or like just not doing the timing correctly. But so we just get this little like cutscene with Sigrid being like, oh, my whole life is dedicated to protecting the Priestess in White and serving her, and something about my sister, and my sister was gone, but I knew that the Priestess in White, that was the important thing, and Lily, I knew I had to protect you, and then the rains came, and that ended that, and because she got blighted, but then you purified her, so now her soul is purified, and you can use her. You got to use her to start. I mean, you can level these things up, but to start with, her Morning Star thing she'll do like a spinning attack, and the best part of this about her attack. So with the sword, it's like you're using the sword. When you use her attacks, you can use them and like run away because she'll stand in one spot and like spin around a few times, and then you can do like a jumping spinning attack. And the same thing, you can like jump at an enemy, spin attack, and like fall back away from them, and she'll take care of that. So that's cool. And then we proceed out of the church that we're in, and after we cross like the bridge outside the church, we run into this like lion that's carrying like a chariot, which is interesting. And then the girl like stops to like pray in front of it, and the knight makes the girl never talks. So then the knight's like, oh, is this somebody you know? Is this somebody that blah blah blah? And there's a note next to him, and it's like, thank you so much for carrying the white priestess around with you wherever she needed to go. And I'm like, okay, this is going to unlock fast travel. And it literally does the next time we get to like a rest area. The lion with the chariot shows back up, and then the Umbrella Knight makes some comment about like, oh, you followed us here. I guess you're here to you're here to help for good. And then it's like, now you can fast travel. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I like how like it's not just like, now you can fast travel, motherfuckers. like there's a very specific reason why, because you have like this ghost or this blighted lion chariot thingy that lets you do that. All right, as we continue on through just kind of like, not even the woods, I want to say, just through this area before we get to like, there's a split in options that we can do. But before that, we hear one of these like blighted creatures crying for his mommy. And we go up there and we fight a mini boss. And once we beat him, we get his powers. Oh, the other thing I forgot about Sigrid is that when she's equipped, I don't know if you need to be equipped, to be completely honest. I equipped her, but she gives you like a double jump of power, so that's nice because now double jump's always like much appreciated in games like this. Anyway, so then we fight this boy monster thing, and once we kill it, it also becomes a spirit for us. His spirit lets us do like this lob attack, which is nice because when sometimes it's just nice to have extra attacks. And it's another one of those things I can use like the priestess, slide away. Or not even slide, dodge backwards, toss this thing, and then I can go up with the sword. Because monsters tend to have, so thus far all the creatures have like a stagger bar and a life bar. And it's not like you need to get the stagger bar to do damage. But when you get the stagger bar down, they get staggered. So then you can take a bunch of shots at them, which is nice. So I took the lower path initially here and took me to this forest with these mushrooms. And they were kind of annoying, and they seemed like, I felt like a little underpowered, and I was like, I clearly was supposed to take the upper path first. So eventually I died fighting these mushroom things in this forest, and went back to the save spot, the rest area right before. And then I took the northern path, and the northern path just had more of the kind of the same like skeleton enemies, with an addition of a few things, like a raven that shoots fire, and these big fatso guys, which are fun to kill. So clearly this was the correct way to go. Oh, man. I also found my first relic, which just gave me more hit points. That's cool. Yeah. And then we just keep going through this, like, the northern path is like a town. So we're going in and out of, like, homes and up and down and whatnot. All right, so our journey through the dark lands, the blighted lands, we continue moving through this town that we started in, and we end up finding the northern, or was it the western? I think it's the western foreign merchant, and so there's these enemies, they're like crows, and they shoot like fireballs that are like a tiny bit homing, and so what I've started to notice, this game's a lot like Castlevania, the one where you like collect cards. It's also kind of like, because there's a Castlevania game for DS. Rondo? It's not Rondo. It's, oh man. Is it Ori of Sorrow? Oh, shoot. It's the one where you like go through paintings and stuff, I'm pretty sure, where you kind of collect cards and you can essentially use all the abilities of all the enemies. And then there's, the one that they made, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which has like a similar function where like if you kill enough enemies, you can get like their souls or whatever. This is like a common like Castlevania thing. And so this Ender Lilies, I feel like it's doing the same thing, but it's slightly different. So when you kill bosses, you get like their ability, like Mega Man style, right? But then also on another level, a lot of just like the regular enemies, there'll be like a mini boss version of them. So like I got like the boy crying for his mother, and it's like this slug you can toss, and there's like an enemy that like crawls on the ground and then jumps at you, and like so you get that ability. But you have to kill the mini boss to get it, and there's like a little story. And so then the Western Merchant is so there's these enemies that are like crows that shoot homing fire at you, and so when you go and fight this thing, and it shoots, you're like in a small space, so it's hard to avoid. And then it took me like 2 or 3 tries. That's what I'm trying to say. And then so it shoots homing fireballs, which are a little bit faster, and then it will also do this like try attack. So we get through that using Skirty or whatever, the Morningstar lady. Because she has this, when you jump and use her attack, it'll like swing, 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 and you can like run away or hit it some more with some swords. So after I got that, I was like, this is now my favorite sub attack. Because you literally summon a crow that just like hangs out with you. So it's like Castlevania Symphony of the Night's like fairies, but it will just keep shooting like, and it only gets like 50 shots. And I will upgrade this until max, because it's like, it does a lot more than you think. Cause I'm like, oh, 50 shots isn't that much. And it does like 10 damage and my sword does like 50. So it's really not that much, but it's like doing God's work, like behind the scenes. Like I have that thing up and I stopped paying attention to it. And then I'm just like killing stuff. And it'll like kill things on its own. It'll like fly around and do stuff. It's like so badass. I was like, damn, this might be the best fucking thing in the game. Super helpful against like future bosses as well, because it's like just doing stuff while I'm trying to like run away. It's like tapping away, right? It's almost like casting like a poison spell and just letting the poison like slowly do what it's got to do while I'm like dodging and doing other things. So it's like the constant damage tick is fantastic. And so anything I will sacrifice the rest and all of my consumable items to power this thing up to max, is what I officially decided. And I was like leveling up other things, and then I was like, I got this, and I was like, oh, that was a waste. I'm sad I did that. Granted, I think you can just like do the boss rush thing and get a bunch more of these materials. So I might try that a little bit and just like really power this thing up so I can have like a little bit easier time. But I'm like, damn, this is like easy mode. Fuck, this thing's so good. If it starts doing like a little bit more damage or like shoot, like I think the next level, because I level it up once, I think the next level will shoot like 2 fireballs or whatever it shoots, and I'm like, god damn, this is fucking tastic. Anyway, and so we continue, after we get that, we continue on through the town, and there's not much else going on. I found some missive on the ground that talked about like this other religion that popped up because of like reasons, but other than that, there wasn't like too much info. Eventually, I stumble upon another one of these mini bosses. So there's these guys with shields that you have to like dodge behind and then attack from behind. And so there's a headless mini boss, and we kill him, and we find out that he chose. And it seems like people are choosing to be blighted because it makes them like immortal, and then they can like protect areas or protect people or serve. And so this guy, it seems like, chose to be blighted so that he could protect like he's like a captain or something, his troops, which are probably just all these other guys that I've been fighting, right? So I'm trying to make connections here where there may or may not be some, but that's how these games tend to be. You're kind of gonna like use a lot of like not obvious cues to kind of put stories together. So that's what we're doing. But anyway, at some point there was like a betrayal. They were mad that he got blighted or something, so we got his head cut off. Anyway, I have not really used him much. His whole thing is that he blocks, and if someone attacks while he's blocking, he'll like counterattack and do a decent amount of damage. Like he'll do like 100 damage, which again I'm doing like 50 to 60 with my normal sword attacks. But it's a lot of like timing and stuff. So I don't know, because you only get like 3. You get like you essentially get 3 attacks per like bar, and so I have like my unlimited regular infinite attack in my first slot, and then in my other 2 slots are like other stuff. And so one's going to be the crow, and then it's like, well, what do I want more? This like parries, this like block thing, or like the priestess thing, which I've been like I'm pretty efficient with, and it's been pretty good to me. And so I put it on my sidebar, but then I don't know. It's just like I'd rather just be aggressive, to be completely honest, in a lot of this stuff. I feel like playing aggressively in most games is the way to go. Sometimes you got to play a little defensively, but thus far I felt like I have not had to really do that. So continuing on through the town, we come to another rest stop, which is good because right next to that is the second boss, like second actual boss. And this is like a big barbarian-looking dude who's got a big club. And he took me a few tries to kind of get what he was doing. He has 3 phases, yeah. So it's another one of these things where it's like once I figured out how to like time his attack so I could dodge behind him and hit him, I was able to get through his first phase with only using the sword, which is important because he has a lot of life. So in the second phase, he adds this attack where he does this like he hits the ground really hard and it sends shockwaves. And at first I was like unable to jump over this fucking thing, but then eventually I figured it out, the timing on it, and then it like no longer did damage to me. And then the third phase he like powers up again, and then he does a lot of jump attacks. And so by the time when I beat him, it was one of those things where I kept using like my main thing, which is like my bird and my my priestess, but then I would get to like another phase and I'd be like, well, this would be better then. I can just figure out how to get through this doing the other thing. And so eventually the way I handled it was I just sorted him to death. I used a little bit of my slug guy, I think, on the first phase. In the second phase, I kept using slug guy and sword because it's really not that much different. He does like one extra attack, so you can still like kind of time his attacks out, and it's pretty. So thus far, the bosses, they telegraph pretty well, and they're pretty slow. So it's not like, as long as you're paying attention and you're not getting yourself like too greedy, you can like get through it. So then on the third phase, I switched to my crow and the priestess, and I kind of just like railed him down pretty quickly. I still had to do some dodging and like dodging back and stuff like that, but I was able to get him down. And we find out that he was like the captain, or he was like, he sacrificed himself to protect this village. Like, he chose to become blighted, and then at some point he met like the white priestess, who's like your mom, and then Lily when she was a little kid, which she still is. And then he's like, oh, is she someday gonna come and like save me, like this woman saved me? And there's like a lot of like implying of things that are occurring there. And he gives us two things. He gives us so these bosses all seem to give me like extra like metrovania kind of stuff. Skirty, the first one, the priestess lady, she gave me double jump. This guy gives me like, this whole time I've been going through these levels, there's like these goos over stuff on the ground, and I was like, no way for me to get down them. So, but now I can use this. He has like a jump, and you jump and then you press down and attack, and it will do like a downward attack, which will shatter these things. And sometimes you have to do them from higher up to break them. So that's like his gift. And his other gift is we have another unlimited attack weapon, and that's like the big hammer that he has, which does big slow attacks. So I equipped that on my second bar just to like try it out. But and then we continue to move forth. All right, so now we're on to, after we defeat the barbarian guy, we're on to the forest. And this is my second time recording this portion of the video, because I started recording it and I was like only halfway through the forest, and I was like, I'm talking way too much. There's really not that much stuff to go over in this game. So just a little behind the scenes. The way I usually do this is I'll play a portion of a game, and then I'll do the walkthrough, essentially, talk and just my thoughts and commentary as we go along. But here there's really not much. Like these kind of Metrovania games that I played generally, the story tends to be pretty sparse, and there's a lot of just like meandering about and then going back and forth to areas, and kind of like there's not much to say, to be honest. Like if we're talking about like lore and doing just a lore video or the whole thing, there's a lot of things nuanced things that you can like discuss and pick apart, like everything that's going on, right? But just like playing through the game, there's really not that much stuff going on. It's just like repeated battles of like the same thing. So I just wanted to finish. I think I'm gonna like finish a whole section before I talk about it. That way I can talk about like the forest. And there's gonna be a lot of back and forth going places, because I definitely went back and used like the barbarian's new power to like destroy things in the ground, to like collect items and stuff. But I don't need to go over that every time. That just like that occurs. You can just assume. You might even see some videos of me doing that, but some clips. So what's the forest? The forest contains a lot of these mushroom guys, like mushroom mages that spit gas at you and throw fireballs at you. Then there's like flying mushrooms, and they shoot this stuff in the air that kind of floats down. There's these wicked like I want to say like dryad kind of mages, where they do like a spinny attack in front of them, and then they also like summon like vines from the ground that will hurt you, and then they also shoot like a fireball. There's mimics here in this portion, and those guys are the biggest assholes of all, because they hit like a truck, and it's hard to they come at you like real aggressively, and they have a lot of life. So you got to be like really on top of things. Like using the priestess for this was very useful, because I would like pop it and then run away. And then I always had my Birdman out, the best thing in the game. And I leveled him up a little bit more. I think I'm just going to focus on leveling that guy up, because that's really clutch in like so many situations where it's just like I'm like running away or trying to dodge stuff, and he's just like hit. So it's like, again, it's like a drain spell. It's fantastic. So in the forest, we find one of these mushroom guys that we can defeat. He's some sort of merchant again, or some sort of traveler that got stuck here with the blight. And once we defeat them, we get the power of spitting the gas out, and the gas is pretty good. It does a decent amount of damage. The issue is you spit it out, and then people like move out of it. Like I didn't use it against normal enemies that much, because they go down pretty quick. But when I was trying to use it against like the other mini boss, and then the boss of this level, which is a witch, she would like it would barely hurt her. I mean, I used it to get through the first phase, so I could save the priestess and the bird for the second two phases, but it still wasn't like super useful. Then you fight one of the dryads, and her deal is she's waiting for like her lost love, or she's waiting for her love, who's like a knight who went off to fight, and then the blight gets her, and so that's like her tragic tale. And her ability is this one's actually pretty good. She comes out and she does like the spinny attack, just takes up like a large portion vertically, and then horizontally not so much. But you can pop that out, and it's like boo 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 boo. The issue is it really doesn't do that much damage. I did use it to fight the witch boss at the end, but. And then the best part of the gas is the gas goes through walls. So there's a couple times where it's like you got to like circumvent like the whole map to get around to like a switch that like opens a shortcut. And I was able to just like gas them and get through the shortcut. And I was like, I doubt this is what they were planning when they came up with this. So that was excellent. There's a lot of water shit in this level too. So clearly and accurately, the witch is going to give us the ability to like actually function in water, because that's been like a sore point. And there's even like some note you can pick up like way back in the church that's like, oh, the priestess of white doesn't enjoy, she can float in the water but she cannot go under the water because the blight is too strong, or some bullshit. So that's obviously going to be one of those things. It's like, oh, now I can do that thing. Cool, sounds good. There's got to be like a triple jump or like a super jump or something. I was just recalling this. Like there's a lot of spots here as there was in the town, and then I was recalling like the spot back at the original church that is literally just like you have to shoot straight up and you can't just double jump up to that. Anyway, so a lot of the notes around here talk about the Coven. The Coven, which is a reference to witches, obviously, and the boss here, as I've already discussed, is a witch boss. So we don't know. I didn't learn that much about the Coven. It was like a thing that existed that kind of, it seemed like, and we got a name at some point, like Ferretti or something, and it seemed like this woman was like a part of the Coven, but then she became like the priestess in white, and it seems like that's like your mom or the previous priestess in white, then Lily, who's the current priestess in white. I was getting some like vague kind of notions of that. So she was like a witch beforehand, and this witch is like another like component of like this kingdom outside of like the guards and stuff. But the witches weren't like all like bad. They like hung out in the woods and with the mushrooms and chilled and stuff. But then with the blight came, everything kind of got destroyed, and their palace or whatever got like crumbled to the earth. And then when you get to the you get to the boss, you fight her. She's got 3 phases. Again, the pattern with these bosses is I have no idea what they do, and so I'm usually able to get through the first phase just by like brute forcing it. But then I'm like out of shit and life. So then I come up with like a more refined strategy, and then I do the same thing with the second phase, and so then I get to the third phase, and this one took a while. It took longer than the previous guy. There was like, I think I was just being a little impatient with stuff, because I got so close a few times. Like I think I tried her like, Callie, I would say at least 10 times before I got her down. But it was all my fault. It was like the greed, right? I should have just like been more patient. Because again, with the other 2 bosses, like the patterns are very straightforward. Like the pattern's not hard to like figure out. It's just having the patience get through it, because they got some like meaty HP pools. So it's more about just like persistence of like your own discipline to get through this boss. But at first she shoots like 6 fire balls, which are easy to dodge, and then she shoots like a big fireball, which is also easy. It's less easy, but also easy to dodge because it's somewhat homing. And then after you beat that phase, she does this thing. She does this like cone, all the way to the top of. Cone's not the right word. What is it? Like a cylinder. She does like a cylinder of like attack magic, and then she does 2 fireballs when she does like the big homing fireballs. So that's a little harder to dodge, and she still does the 6 fireballs. And then when you get to her third phase, she does this like very tricky, like you'll get in close to hit her after, because usually when you shoot the 6 fireballs is like the easiest thing to dodge, and then she stands there for a second, so you can really get some hard damage in. And then even the big homing fireballs, once you dodge them, you can hit her. Usually by the third phase, she's like higher up when she's doing it, so it's a little harder. Like I would use the priestess because she can do like a jumping spin attack. But in this one, after if you hit her, you can hit her like once or twice, and then you got to move the fuck out of the way, because she does this like crazy like vine thing that shoots out of the bottom of her. Like she'll teleport real quick and then use it, and if it hits you, it does a lot of damage. So it's not like you can like make a mistake and be like, oh, that's okay. Like that thing killed me so many times because I just was being greedy instead of just hitting her like once. I think you can maybe hit her twice out of like the 3-hit combo that the sword has, and then you got to get the fuck out because she'll do that. And sometimes I'll jump to like attack her after she does something, and she'll just use it like right away. So that's a key thing to keep an eye out. And then she again does the cylinder attack, and she moves a little faster. But that like vine thing that she shoots out of the bottom of her is really the killer, because it's not as, I felt like it was not as telegraphed as the other attacks. Like it happens like pretty quick. So you got to just assume it's going to happen every time you do anything and just try to like stay out of the way. But once I kind of got the hang of that, the when I beat her, it wasn't that hard. I think I still had like, because at this point I have 3 healing prayers. I think I still had like 1 or 2 healing prayers because it's just like I'd gotten used to the patterns, and so it wasn't. I was just like, all right, take a breath. We're just gonna take this real slow and real easy. Got through the first phase without taking damage. Got through the second phase. I don't think. Like I said, I think I only used 1 prayer. I don't know. The video will reveal the truth. And then you get the sad story. She's like sitting there and she's like, oh, if only my friend, and this is where you get the name like Ferretti or whatever, was still here. And I know she had to go to like protect the people, but in my death, I'm going to accept the blight or whatever so that I can join her and protect the people as well. And the coven's fallen and all this stuff. So it's really tragic. And then her ability is she can, you don't get like a weapon, but you get the ability to shoot like a homing fireball. And then now you can go in the water. Hooray. So we get like a bubble of protection, so now we can swim around, and we can head out and start gathering items and such. So now that we have our water exploring ability, we're going to go meander about and see what's going on. We actually find some interesting stuff. So I want to run around the town, I run around the forest, looking for the next place to go. Eventually I find it. It's like the home of the ancients. It's like this old kind of dark looking temple area. But before then, we find some more white priestesses who are dead. We get some items for them. So what I've learned is that Lily here, if that's even my name at this point, I'm questioning it, is not the only white priestess, and that we find a dead white priestess and she has like some item on her or some note, and then our homie Umbral Knight is like, damn, is this what they do with white priestesses? I didn't know it was this bad. They're locking up like this. That's some bullshit. We also come across Ferretta's band or ring or something, and that's the lady the witch was like, oh Freda, what have we done, or something, you became a white priestess, I wish I could have protected you, blah blah blah. And it's the woman that I'm sticking with in like the cutscenes and stuff, is like the older lady, the older white priestess, who is like, I don't know if I said mom before, but I'm gonna kind of stick with that, the mom or the master of the current person we're playing, Lily, which again, these games like to do this thing where, oh my gosh, there's a rooster in the middle of the room. These games like to do this thing where, it's like Nier, right? The whole Nier thing is like, when 2B dies, she dies, but she gets her brain gets like re-uploaded into a new 2B body that's like on the Prometheus. I don't know. I don't remember the fucking thing on the moon was, or this thing in space was called. Forgive me. But so there might be a thing where there's just a bunch of these white priestesses and you just like take over a new one, like the spirit. I don't know. There's nothing implying that at this point that I have read or seen. But yeah, that's kind of wild. So then we finally get to this new area, the ancients. I don't know what to call it. I'm calling it the Temple of the Ancients. No one refers to it as that, but because as soon as we walk in, Umbral Knight's like tells us this like sad story. It's like the ancients used to live here in this past this area, and they lived in peace. And then one day they were all destroyed. And then we like get a save our game, and we read some stuff about like the ancients doing stuff, or like, oh, the rain that was coming, something again with the blight. And then as we start to leave this area, he's like, I am the last. I am the last of the ancients, or I was the last of the ancients before I passed and made before I made the eternal that's what it is. Like he made like, I made the eternal promise or the eternal covenant. I was the last of the ancients, and then I made the eternal covenant, which allowed me to live forever or something. So it looks like this guy was never blighted like these other spirits. He just made some promise to like live forever and protect the white priestesses, or to protect you, or the vast arrays of your consciousness, or whatever this thing ends up being. So that's some wild stuff. And with that, we enter the Temple of the Ancients. All right, guys. So at this point, we're in the ancient ruins. I looked up a map and I saw that they're called the catacombs, so I guess I'll refer to that. My bad before. So the catacombs suck, and it's at this point in the game, I turn to my best friend in the whole world, and I'm playing games that I want to play for like story, or just like to kind of take it all in for the atmosphere and whatnot. But I'm like sick and tired of fucking like replaying levels like multiple times. The best friend in the whole world, cheat engine. So I max out all my attacks, and that's not cutting it because they still do like very little. It's very like kind of like a Dark Souls situation where it's like you can be max level with max everything, and you still can't just like roll things. So I gave myself infinite life. There it is. I did it. I find I have to do this oftentimes. I did the same thing with Salt and Sanctuary and the same thing with Blasphemous. And like, put your hate in the comments. That's fine. I don't give a fuck. I never had this problem with like Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, or Castlevania, or Ori and the... Oh no, I haven't played that yet. Any other kind of like regular Metrovanias, any of the Metro games. Yeah, they're just called... No, not Metro. Metroid games. It's just these games that are like pseudo, kind of like Dark Souls-y, I guess. They take like the principle of like, we're going to be hard. And I just don't feel like they do it that well. And like people... At some point, I was looking at like the Steam reviews or whatever, and people are like in love with this game. And I honestly don't get it. And we'll talk more about that when I finish up the game and I have time to like process the whole thing. But thus far, even it's like before cheating, I was kind of bored with this. And with cheating, I'm like less bored because I'm not constantly playing the same fucking level over and over again. Or I had to like very slowly move forward and very precisely use these like same 4 attacks. And it's like, it's super boring. Like, I'm just not feeling it that much. Anyway, the whole mythos is still pretty interesting. So we continue forth. We find the archer who was trying to defend his sister, but then he became like a guardian and died. So we got his soul, and his thing is that he can shoot a bunch of arrows upwards. We also find this like there's spider monsters in this part of the game in the catacombs, and so we find a soul of like the spider. I can't remember what their fucking deal was. I think there were sorceresses. So when the people were trying to gather together to fight the blight, is my understanding from reading some stuff, the sorcerers gave poison to some of the soldiers, and that turned them into like these spider monsters. And when we get to the boss, we see a little bit kind of more of this going on. And the boss is actually the most interesting part of this whole section. So I worked my way through this, not really enjoying it that much, but much better now that I can't. I'm immortal. And we get to the boss, and the boss is super cool because we roll in, and it's another priestess, just like Sigurd. This one's called like Svidi. I want to say, I don't remember exactly what she's called, but she is the sister, like the biological sister of Sigurd, and she's like, oh, I tried everything I could to like protect Floret or whatever, but I couldn't do it, and I wish I'd just gone and protected my sister from the blight. And then we see like a little, there's like, it's not movie clips, we see like a picture, and the picture like expands slowly. So it's almost like a comic book kind of style situation. And we see her holding the white priestess she's supposed to be guarding while she's like dead, overcome with the blight. And we see like the people turning into like spider monsters in the background. And she's super sad hippopotamus. She's got a hammer, which is I tried using it for like a second. Was like, nah, I'm good. Right now I'm sporting the sword. Oh yeah, we finally found some fucking upgrade items for the sword, and I tried to cheat engine duplicate those, but that failed. But whatever, it does a lot more damage now. That's all that really matters. And then they using the wizard's blast attack, and of course my crow homie, who's now maxed out and shoots like 4 fucking things, and they're huge and they do so much goddamn damage. Best thing in the game, hands down. So we beat her, and she has the same situation where we fight her as like a priestess. She's got like cute little wings, and then she turns into like the big monster priestess, just like Sigurd. So there's definitely some interesting stuff about that, them being sisters and then turning into these monstrosities and all that stuff. Once we beat her, we purify her and we learn all that stuff I just said before we get her abilities. We get the hammer, don't give a fuck about that, but we get like I mentioned, like there's got to be like a high jump or a triple jump or something, and then there's got to be like a glide, because there's like areas that require like 2 different things. And we don't get a glide per se, but we get like a forward sprint in the air from her. So now we can double jump, and then we can do like it'll shoot us like, I want to say like a third of the way across the screen at that point, which is useful. And I spent a little bit of time kind of moving around, but I'm like, okay, I still don't have like this, I don't want to just like go and get everything. And I found like the stone tablet, and it said it's 1 of 7, so I'm assuming I need to use that at some point to like get the true ending of the game or something. So I'm going to go look for those, but I'm not going to do any of that shit until I have like everything I need. Right? I just got to avoid, usually with these games, like Blasphemous is the same way, I just got to avoid fighting like the final boss. And then I can go back through and like find all the goodies once I have like everything. Because there's really not like goodies you need in this. Like in Castlevania Symphony of the Night or a lot of Castlevania games, you gotta like go back and find other things to use. In this, there's none of that. The only thing you need to get to progress forward is to fight the bosses. So at this point, I'm just trying to rush to the bosses of all the areas that I can find. And then from there, we will go back using the map, and I might even look at the map online because I don't give a fuck. And just try to get like any of the other extra goodies that I really need, because again, I'm not really feeling it. And at this, like, once I'm like, all right, cheat engine time, it's like I just want to get through this game and kind of get more of the lore and story. I'm not really here to like master the game or anything. which I don't find that appealing. So then we head back. There was like a snowy place in the catacombs that we couldn't get through before. So now we head there because now we can like jump over to it, and that takes us to the Tower Spire, which is the next area that we are at. And the Tower Spire has like dragon guys, and we find out a similar situation where they were like, maybe they were transformed by the sorcerers. There was somebody transformed by the sorcerers. I thought it was the spider guys, but maybe they were just transformed by the blight, and the dragon guys were. I think it was the dragon guys were transmuted by the sorcerers. But we go ahead and fight one of those mini bosses of the dragon guy and get their ability, which lets us shoot like this poison thing. And then there's like level 2 of the dragon guys that are actually like bigger dragons that are a little more tough to beat. And we just kind of climb our way up the tower, trying to figure out where this boss situation is. Oh, one thing we do find is Henri's like study or whatever. And it's this guy, and he's talking about some crazy shit with like protecting somebody and hiding somebody in like the abyss. And I'm like, oh, the abyss. That's probably a place I gotta go eventually at some point. As we progress up the Twin Spires, we learn a little bit more about these knights and the ancients. So there's definitely some like bad blood between the ancients and then the like kingdom. And that includes the sorcerers and the coven and stuff. And so there's some like kind of wild shit going on here with people being merged with like through the blight with like we find a girl who's merged with like her dog, it seems. And then we end up fighting some centaur guys. And I mentioned the spider people already before. So something about the blight can like merge people with creatures or merge things together, which is like an interesting thing. It's hard to kind of figure out what's going on here with the Twin Spires, I feel, as I'm getting like somewhat mixed messages. Like, I feel like the Twin Spires are the ancients, and there's the boss at the end, Ulv the Mad Knight. His whole thing is he's trying to guard one of these white priestesses, and he clearly failed at his job because after we fight him and we hear his whole like backstory about all he wanted to do was save the priestess and help, and there's like some other issues involved with that. That behind him is a dead white priestess that he was trying to protect. He also talks about how the white priestess loved these like red flowers that we see walking into like his area at the top of the spires, and that he kind of protected the flowers after she had like passed and he'd gone crazy. What I'm kind of gathering, and I could be totally off base because I'm really not that much of like a delve into the lore guy with this game particularly, because I kind of don't give a fuck, is that I think this is the ancients, and that they were guarding the way to this water area that we got hinted at before, where there's like pure water that can save Lily, I want to say, who's us maybe. I'm still not 100% sure of that. Anyway, so then we kind of... he gives us the power of the claw, which is a great ability. And so I still feel like I'm missing something when it comes to like there's going to be a jump or a collide. But maybe not. And the reason I say that is because there's still some areas that... I apologize. The claw lets us climb up walls, which is awesome. So we can like jump on a wall, jump on a wall, jump on a wall. It allows us to get up flat walls. But there's still some areas where I can like not really access without having like a super jump or something. And I don't know. Maybe I'm just bad at this game and I don't understand. I mean, I'm clearly bad at it. But we head on back because there was this area that said I could go, but then there's like all this like blue goo around it, and I was gonna like try to climb that. That didn't work, and I was like, all right, well maybe we try going the other way. And this is back where we got a barbarian guy, Eric the Red. I don't know, the guy with the big axe. No, it's an axe. Something. Anyway, he there was like a big wall, like a big tower in the way. So I kind of work my way back around over there, go up the tower, and I get into like this castle area. This is actually where I run into like the centaur. And then there's more knights and like more terrible kind of knights. Like there's these big knights with these big shields, and then there's like a fast knight, kind of like the knight with the shield, but they like attack much quicker. And then there's like these paladins, I want to say, who are big knights, but they don't have shields. They cast like magic. All kind of annoying. This is like, we get some very interesting lore here. So as I'm walking around reading stuff, we see that this kingdom like showed up to this land, and that they fought the ancients, but that the ancients had these immortal soldiers. And we know about that because we have Umbral Knight, who's one of these immortal soldiers for the ancients. And that they were having a real hard time fighting them because they would like fight and fight and fight, nothing would happen. And so the king decided, for his own arrogant needs, that he was going to turn some of his soldiers into these immortal warriors. He was going to utilize the power of the Blight, which has somehow tied into the ancients. And he even mentions this like Blight Lord. And I'm assuming the Blight Lord is the final boss. But so there's this Blight Lord, and that he was able to defeat him or capture him and then use the power of the Blight on his own soldiers so that he could gain more power. But then we also learned that kind of got out of hand because you can't really control these blighted soldiers. Like they're immortal, but then they kind of go crazy, right? And as we climb up the tower, as we climb up the castle, we eventually run into this knight captain Julian, and he has this spear and he's kind of an asshole. But once we kill him, we get this whole story where he saw what the king did, and it really upset him because it was like fucking everything over and they were going to lose and be, all this stuff. But honestly, Julian didn't give a fuck about any of that. He didn't care about the people, he didn't care about the peasants, he didn't care about the soldiers. All he cared about was getting his father's acknowledgement, because he's actually a bastard son of the king. And so everything he did was to get acknowledgement from his father, the king. And when he went up to the king's chamber, when everything was going to shit, he just found him like babbling and crying, that he not that he had done something wrong, but that he wasn't going to be able to rule over the kingdom anymore. Because he had brought the Blight onto them. But again, he wasn't sorrowful that he had brought the Blight. He's just sorrowful that it didn't work out well. And he didn't give a fuck about anybody. And then Julian holds him down to the ground and murders him with his great spear from this cutscene we see. And then we get a note. Oh no, he maybe mentions this. There's a note too. But in some manner, we learn that he's just as bad as the king because he didn't give a fuck about the soldiers or the people either. All he cared about, and this is where we get this revelation, all he cared about was getting his father's attention. And as he was killing his father or about to kill his father, and his father looked him in the eyes and acknowledged his existence for the first time, it was very satisfying. And then he killed him. And then he was overwhelmed by the Blight as well. And from this guy, so that's two bosses. So from this guy, we finally get this spear attack thing. Or it's so now when we dodge, if we hold the dodge button, which is R2 or trigger or whatever, you will dodge, and then you will just keep going. Forever, essentially. And then there's these pus walls, these red walls that so there's stuff on the floor that from the other knight, there's so many knight captains. This other knight captain or the barbarian guy, if we jump down on them and we attack downwards, he'll break through them. But now there's also walls that are straight up. And so now if we dodge into them and attack, it will break through those walls. And then some walls are more impressive, so that we need to dodge from further away. So that just opens up more avenues of stuff. Honestly, now I think I'm going to head back to the beginning of the game, because there was an area that was hey, you can go up here, but I couldn't go up there. But now that I got the claws, I'm going to go check that part out and see what's going on. So the claws didn't do shit with trying to get to that spot. So there's clearly something else going on. I need a super jump or something in Super Metroid, or a flying ability or something. And so I'm fuck. And so I'm wandering around trying to figure out, because there's the abyss, and I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to be down there yet because it's super hard, and things insta kill, and there's gas and stuff. And even though I'm cheating, I'm I don't know, this doesn't seem right. There's got to be another place. And I'm finding areas that I cannot access that leads somewhere. So eventually, after going to so the way the map's set up, there'll be a little red dot in areas that are places to go that you have not explored yet. Now, it doesn't give me any information about locked doors or any of that shit. And while we're on this topic, I think the biggest thing that bothers me about this game, besides kind of the my poor skill and slash the difficulty, is, and when I talk about that, because okay, so tangent number 2, and then we'll get back. So my number 1 beef with this game thus far, and this continues to be the case, is the difficulty. And yeah, I could get good, but it's one of those situations where I have played and beaten just about every like Soulsborne style game. Now, people like to say like Ender Lillies, Blasphemous, Hollow Knight, I think that's what it's called, are Souls-like games. I 1000% disagree. They are not. They are like Legend of Zelda, Link 2 style games. They are Castlevania style games with like some mechanics cribbed off the FromSoft games. Now this doesn't even have that. This is straight up like at no time playing Ender Lillies am I like, this reminds me of Dark Souls 2. Blasphemous had this mechanic where when you died you would lose stuff and you could go pick it up. I think Hollow Knight, I don't know, I bounced off Hollow Knight like real hard. Like I didn't even want to cheat in that game. Like I was so bored with it. I don't understand people's appeal to that. Like Ender Lillies here, now that I'm cheating, I'm actually having like a decent time. And Blasphemous was the same way. Like I was like, oh, this is kind of, I like the aesthetic and I like the story, but meh. But like I played through every Castlevania game, most of the Metroid games that are side scrollers. I don't care about Metroid Prime stuff. I played Axiom Verge. I played a bunch of the shit. And something about like this, when people are like, oh, it's Souls-like. No. It just has a difficulty. Or Salt and Sanctuary is another one. That is just annoying. Because part of the joy of playing like a Metrovania game is the exploring and trying things and getting, being like, oh, I can't get through here. And then like coming back later and being like, hell yeah, fuck yeah. Or like seeing something and being like, I know I can get to that, but I can't get to it now. So like I gotta find something to get to that. I never got that feeling while playing any of these, like Blasphemous, Salt and Sanctuary, Hollow Knight, or this. They just seem like worse versions of that because they try to like implement, quote unquote, or not implement, they're trying to implement like quote unquote FromSoft design into their games. But FromSoft never made a fucking side scroller. Like their games are like Kingsfield, which is like a dungeon crawler, like first person role playing game. And then they had like the Soulsborne games, if you will, which are all third person action adventure or action role playing games, And then they had Armored Core, which is fantastic, but it's just like a mech adventure, like action game. And I guess you could almost call it an RPG because you can like buy new parts for your mechs and make mechs and stuff. I haven't played Fires of Rubicon; it's on my list. But I played like 4 of them, and I know that's not even all of them, and they're all like that. So I'm assuming Fires of Rubicon is similar, that you can like really customize your mech, and so you can almost say like the role playing aspects are that. Blasphemous, Ender Lillies, Hollow Knight, Sanctuary. These games are not that. They are Metrovania games with like you. That's it. Like Ender Lillies is straight up just a Metrovania game that has like bullshit mechanics as far as I'm concerned. Like I go into a room and I get jumped by like 4 guys, and it's like, okay, cool. Now when I go back in that room, I know I'm gonna get jumped, and so I do something else. But then I do something else, and I get jumped by a different guy that was standing just off the edge of the screen. And it's a lot of complaints people have with like Dark Souls 2, which I 100% disagree with. I have about this game. And these style games, it's just kind of like these bullshit mechanics that it's like, oh, you got to use this very precise thing, and it's like, okay, that's defeats the purpose. Like now I'm like bashing my head against the wall to try to get through like these annoying bad guys by like trying to combine stuff, and I can't even change stuff on the fly. I have to go back to like the rest points, and it's so annoying. It's one of those things where it drags it down for me. Like I'm like, I like the idea of this, and I actually enjoy the story and like kind of the scenery and like I enjoy everything about this game except actually playing this game. So when I cheat, I'm like, hell yeah. Now I felt the same way about Salt and Sanctuary and Blasphemous, where it's like I enjoy this game as long as I'm invincible because it's annoying to play, and the annoyance really gets in the way. And call me what you want, I don't give a fuck. It's annoying to play. Period. The end for me. Obviously everything. Yeah, you know what? I'm not going to condition things. I don't give a fuck what you think. So, oh, God. Goodness. So, but while I'm cheating and I can like run around, and even if it's annoying because fucking this game keeps freezing because I'm cheating, because I'm hacking into the code with Cheat Engine to like make modifications. I don't, it's like whatever. It's still, it's enjoyable enough that I'm willing to put up with like the constant like game just dying on me, and like I have to like restart. And it has a decent auto-save feature. Like I only one time did I have to like go back and do something again. Okay, so that's the worst part. The second worst part, it's kind of tied into that. It's just like everything about this game is good except actually playing it, like the battles and stuff, and the bosses are fine. Like I've literally, with like the infinite life would turn off mid battle with the boss, and I'd still be able to get through some of them. And I'm sure if I like, and I don't mind that. Like you're going to a boss, I want to hit it hard. I want to kind of figure out what to do. There's like lots of mechanics like dodge and all this stuff, but none of those mechanics matter when it's like there's 6 dudes jumping your ass, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like I can't escape because usually when you have 6 guys jumping your ass, it's because they trapped you in like a room. And so I'm trying to like move around and like get like some leverage to like use an ability to like fight back, and it's just annoying. It's just not fun at all. And then you got to go back through these rooms like multiple times, and it's like, oh my gosh, I just don't. It's so boring. So I do not find that. But the boss, that's the thing. The boss part is fine. It's like just playing the game regularly. Like I'm just trying to explore and look around, and there's like 6 crows in the air, and I'm trying to jump up to get them, and then I fall, and there's like a knight standing there, and he hits me because you can't like dodge again, and it's like, oh god damn, this fucking game. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Like slowly draw these characters out one at a time? They don't follow you. So no, you got to just like dodge past them, or like if you want to fight. Anyway, it gets super annoying, but. The bosses are all pretty decent, and even the sub-bosses, because you're in an arena and you fight them. If it was just that, this game would have been 100 times better. So the other annoying thing, the second annoying thing, which is less annoying than just playing the game, but is the maps. The maps are fucking annoying because they don't give you any information. Like it's like, oh, you can go here. The sizes, like... It'd be one thing if it was just like squares. It's like this square goes to that square, goes to that square, goes to that square. No, it's a bunch of fucking rectangles. Some are up and down, some are left and right. They give you no information. Like you'll see two rectangles that are exactly the same size, and their levels are completely different. And I'm like, I don't remember having this fucking shit before, like in Symphony of the Night or any of these other games. Like Symphony of the Night, it's just like rectangles, period, from what I recall. And then in Metroid, you get like rooms, like you get a decent map. And so it's like, this map sucks. And it doesn't tell you, like, you can't mark it in the thing. It doesn't just, like, mark things for you, which it should. Because it's just like, okay, so now I gotta, like, draw my own fucking map while I'm playing this action-adventure game. Like, this is not, like, some old-school, like, dungeon crawl, where it's, like, part of the fun is having your graph paper and, like, graphing shit out so you can figure out where you're going. This is, like, I'm just trying to move fast and play the game. But the game, like, doesn't want you to play it. It wants you to be punished for playing it, and that's what's annoying. And that's what's annoying about a lot of these. I don't remember Blasphemous doing this either, or Hollow Knight. I feel like this is and like maybe I'm just not remembering, but it like really stuck in my craw this time. So the only information you get is if you've gone to that room or not. It'll turn yellow if you've gotten everything in the room, like all the items and whatnot, and mini bosses, and then there'll be a red dot. And the red dot is like loosely in the position where it might be. But for example, there'll be a rectangle room, and there'll be like a red dot on the left at the top, a red dot on the right at the top, and a red dot on the right at the bottom. And so you're like, okay, I'm trying to get to the red dot on top, and you go to like the very top of the map, which can be like a vertical rectangle, even though it's a horizontal rectangle, and there's nothing there. And so it's like, this gives me no information. Like I know this one's higher up than this other exit, but that's all you know. And it's like, it's enough to get through, but it's like, this sucks. Like this is so annoying. Like it's just one more thing where it's like, this game is doesn't make the game more difficult. It just makes it like annoying. Like you got to just like trudge around more. Because again, like as long as you don't go to a rest point, when you kill an enemy, they're dead. So it's like if you kill everything, you're just trying to trudging around this room, trying to figure out where these exits are. Like it's not like you're solving a puzzle or you got to like use something. It's like just annoying because you got to keep climbing up. And some of these rooms are so fucking big. And it's like you're like, oh my gosh, I'm still in this fucking room trying to like move around, figure out where shit is at. Like I had no interest in going back and like finding stuff at some point. All right. Anyway, so that's what I'm gonna say about that. All right. So back to the story. So eventually, after going to all these like red dots, and most of them being like doors that I can't open because I don't have that skill yet, or like being up high where I can't get to either because I need this other ability, I finally find like a water pathway, I think in the forest, that took me to not the catacombs, but somewhere else that is also, it's like a dungeon. I can't remember what they call it. But it's where all the executioners hang out, like the dark executioners. So that Henri guy we've read about a few times, who we find out is the uncle of Julian, the knight with the spear that we just killed, who's the son of the king. So his sister was his mother, is Julian's mother. So Henri's like the uncle, and the uncle raised him in like with like dark executioners before he left to become like a knight and raise himself up so he could like meet his dad finally. Very interesting. So again, like the story stuff is all pretty good, and the way you find out about it, which you find out all this stuff through like the little cutscene after you beat people and like some of the items, and you find like little notes around. So I like all that stuff's great. I enjoyed all that aspect. So we work our way through here, and finally we get to Henri, and it's actually a very interesting boss fight. It's almost like a Watchers of the Abyss from Dark Souls 3, I want to say, where you have it's different in that you have Henri, he's the main guy, but then he just keeps summoning these dark executioner bosses, and their whole thing is they like disappear and then reappear somewhere else, and they have these axes, so they attack somewhat slowly, but then they'll like dodge behind you, and there's a bunch of them, so you gotta like take care of all them while you're trying to fight Henri, and you'll hit him a couple times and he'll like dodge across the room. Then after you get to like his second or third phase, the executioner, I think it's his third phase, the executioners start coming and he becomes a lot more aggressive. But once we beat him, we get this like knife attack thing that he does, and then we get the grappling hook. And I'm like, grappling hook, the fuck? And then the game like every time you get one of these new abilities, it gives you like a little it gives you like a little screen where you can like watch what it does, so you can like figure it out, so you're not just completely fucking lost. And it's like I'm watching it, and it's like just grab one of these spots that are all over the place that you never saw before. And I'm like, okay, and no fucking joke. Yep. I don't know if I just didn't see them or what, but they're all over the place. And so now finally, yeah, and everything I said about him being Julian's uncle and stuff, we talked about that. He also was guarding another priestess, so again, it's one of these guys that's like, once you beat him, you kind of go to like the next room, and there's like one of these white priestesses. And you're like, there's a lot of these fucking chicks that look just like me. That's very interesting. We finally get the answer to that pretty soon, so everything's pretty satisfying. Spoiler alert, I guess. Once we kind of get all the information that the game gives you, I didn't have to look any of this stuff up. Like I went and looked up a couple things, and it was like it just confirmed that like I understood what the game was telling me. So excellent storytelling across the board. So we see another one of them, and we're like, oh, that's odd. So then we go back to the chapel finally, and yeah, that spot where I was trying to use the claw, that I saw nothing there before. Now there's two of these like grappling points, so I can get my way up there. And we find this room with a white priestess, and we get a note, and the white priestess is Lily. We are not Lily. That is Lily. So when Sigrid is talking about protecting Lily, she wasn't talking about protecting us. She was talking about doing this other girl. And then like the Umbral Knight is like, oh hey, was this like your friend? And you're like, yeah, I guess it was. Also, at some point, we find another Umbral Knight who's dead. And then we were able to get like upgrades for like the main sword attack. And he talks about it. He's like, yeah, there was a bunch of us and we all came in here, but people died and I'm the last one. And you're like, oh shit. So that's some interesting tidbits as well. So yeah, so now that this lady's dead and like the mute priestess, who is me, who is the main character, Umbral Knight and her have a conversation, which is just Umbral Knight telling you things. While you like nod. Because she does have some animation. She'll like bow her head, or she'll like a nod, or you'll get some things. He's like, oh well, that must have been a friend of yours, and then she like nods. And it's like, well, now that she's gone, you can be Lily because that's the name you want, or something. And she's like nods again. So it's like, okay, we are Lily, but that's not the Lily people have been referring to this whole time. And you find out there's a whole bunch of these. And then I start to gather in my brain. Finally, it clicks. It's like, okay, so this white priestess of the font is like the white priestess. And there were other white priestesses before her, but she's like the current white priestess. Because at some point, I go to the font, right? And then I was like, nah, there's got to be more to this game. I'm going to look around some more. If you continue on to the font, and I got this ending, you get one of the endings. You get ending, I'm assuming A, because it has like a red A, and then when you get different endings, you get like a red B and C. So ending A is you go in there, and you can go here as soon as you find it. So right after the tower spire, you can get to this font, because that's when I did it. But then I left. But if you just keep going, you bump into like the white priestess of the font, who's like the mother character you keep seeing throughout all this. And then she's like, oh, the other thing I forgot to mention was that Lily, the main character girl, the like self-proclaimed Lily, her whole deal is as she takes on more blight from the bosses, her hair, so she stops being like pure white, like white hair, white skin, all this stuff, to having like red streaks or black streaks in like her hair and in her dress and stuff. And that's her taking on the blight, which is important, and it's good storytelling because it kind of tells you like things are changing, there's an issue here, there's things that need to be done. But you see like the priestess of the font, and she just looks all in her white, and she essentially takes all the blight off Lily and sets us free so that we can leave. But if we when Lily leaves, the Umbral Knight has to stay because he made a promise to like stick around until like the very end, or and it pretty much he pretty much tells you like this is not the canon ending or this is not the correct ending, but go and be free and like live your life and be happy. And so it's kind of bittersweet. And that promise is kind of a big deal. It's the whole reason he's with us in the first place. And we learn more about that in a little bit here. So we're obviously not going to take that ending because that ending's bullshit. So what ending are we going for? We're going for the best ending. Yeah, you got that right. I didn't cheat for nothing. So how do we get the best ending? Well, we got to search around some more. And we got to head down into the abyss. Now that we have all the components that we need to get everything in the game we need. We have the claw to climb up walls. We got the hook shot. We got the falling down thingy. The running into thingy. We got double jump. We got the dash in the air. We got whatever the witch gave us. Oh, the ability to go underwater. We're like ready to go. We're going to find whatever we got. And of course we have to find these stone tablets. I briefly mentioned this before because I feel like I stumbled into finding one. And I actually didn't. So I don't know how I knew about these things. I must have read about it somewhere in game or out of game or I don't know. Because I feel like I really didn't look up any information on this game until till much later than when I mentioned that. But I don't know. Maybe I read something somewhere. Anyway, we were able to track down the first room because it's pretty easy to get to. It happened when I was just like meandering about trying to figure out what to do next. And we learn about Phaedon. Phaedon is the court... I think it's Phaedon. Phaedon's the court mage. And he was sent by the king to discover how to like abuse the blight to create like eternal soldiers and do experiments. So he's the one who kind of took a bunch of mages and other people and headed down into the abyss where like the heart of the blight was. And we read a lot about him in the abyss and at this point in the game. But we learn that there's a way for the white priestesses. So when the white priestesses absorb... So when the white priestess of the font, who is a descendant of an ancient, like the ancients that were being slaughtered here or battled against, the more she absorbs the blight, the more the blight kind of overcomes her and she becomes in super pain. And we eventually learn, and this is getting, again, into like future stuff, but I'm also talking about it here. We eventually learn that there was a blight lord, and as she went to pacify the blight lord, she took on too much blight in that she has like become the new blight lord. And there was like efforts by Phaedon to create clones of her who were like her daughters, who are all the white priestesses that we find, because we're like identical looking little girls with white hair. So including Lily and me, Lily, we're all clones. And so in the opening scene, when we see a woman and then like a smaller person nearby, or like whenever we see the smaller people, they're clones of the priestess of the font. They're all the white priestesses, and they were created to absorb some of the blight from the priestess of the font so that she would not become overwhelmed with it and become like the blighted lord too. Program failed. They all died. All the clones. Except me. Except Lily Part 2. So we find all this out by moving around the abyss and looking at stuff, and there's some writings about a mask that we can use, because there's whole sections of the abyss that are like, we got to go through poison water, we got to go through poison gas, and apparently if we have this mask, it does like 1/10 of the damage. I'm cheating, so like whatever, but I never found this fucking mask, so it's out there somewhere, and it's super important to get through here, because there's whole areas where I'm like, I don't know how to get through this, because you take like 100 damage per like every second or two, and I only have like 300 hit points. And I've explored probably like 75% of the map. So it's not going to get much higher. Because not every place I explored or didn't explore is going to have like an extra 5 hit points. So I can take like 4 seconds of this, 6 seconds of this before I die. And there's like, it's impossible. But if you got lots of prayers, because you can have up to like 4 or 5 prayers, I think, based on the items that I had at the end of the game. And you're only taking 10 hit points per every like few seconds, you can easily survive these sections. So as we move around the abyss, we just learn about this. We learn about the experiments. We see some crazy shit. The Emerald Knight talks about it. At some point, I'm trying to remember we learn more about him, if it's around this point. But we learn more about him. We learn that he made a promise with a previous priestess of the White to protect her, and then he failed, as all Umbral Knights do, apparently, because they eventually die from like the blight or just whatever. But because he made like an eternal promise, he was like stuck, which is why he exists as like the Umbral Knight. And that we find out that when he first came to wake me up, the main character up, he was going to like kill her so he could just like be at peace. But then for some reason he decided to just let's see like how this would play out. And as they traveled together, he became very like enamored with her. Or he just became, it's implied that he has kind of like a fatherly role. And we even see in his cinematic scene he's holding like a baby who I think is the descendant. So there was the priestess of the font, who's the current one. Before her I think it was the priestess of the wind, and then there was a priestess before that, and then I think there was one more that we have like that I've read about. The Dawn, maybe? Priestess of the Dawn. But they're all like, it's like a matriarchal line. So with the priestess of the font, since she didn't have any children, these clones are kind of like her children, and she treated them like children, and the way she treats you in like ending A is like a child, like my daughter. So eventually we run into, I forget her name, but she's like a huge blob monster, and she's the lover slash lab assistant of Faden, and she doesn't move. She's just a boss that hangs tight, and we get nothing from her. But then we go to the next room, we find Faden, who's like completely blighted out, and like we purify him. We don't purify her, we purify him. And this is where we get access to, periodically throughout the land, there's these doors that are locked. And he gives us, from him we get the magic that lets us open these doors. And he also teaches us, or we get the attack power we get from him is like the super blaster attack. Which is slow, but it takes a bunch of blight and like shoots it out as like a Kamehameha attack. Which is cool. So once we have the lock, and we read a little bit more about his experiments, and Umbral Knight makes his commentary about like this guy, what was he doing, and like what was going on, and like again, it all goes back to this like king who was a total jackass, who didn't care about anybody but just wanted eternal soldiers to fight and kill the ancients, and like so the Umbral Knight's kind of like fuck this guy, and I'm kind of like fuck that guy. I agree, Umbral Knight, like fuck that guy, and so now that we have the door opening power, we can now go get all the stone tablets. And so we wander the land, I used whatever, the Ender Lillies fandom page or whatever, and just went to and get picked up. There's like one in each of like the biomes. So we go and pick up all the fragments, then we head all the way back to the beginning. Oh, this is where we learn more about the Umbral Knight. Oh, that's right. So we learned that Faden, and there's some talk about him being kind of like a crazy person or doing all this stuff, but in the end, we determined based on everything in the kind of the Umbral Knight reminisces on the fact that he was like a good guy just trying to do the best that he could with like the crazy situation he was in, and like the king's like insane edicts. So the king really is like the bad guy in this whole situation. So we head all the way back to the church, and now we can enter a back area, and then in that area we find like more like we find this like pure essence. It's called like the amulet of something, Aguilar or something, and this thing protects the white priestesses from the blight, like protects them from the pain of the blight. And by using this, we're able to not suffer from the effects of purifying people as much or at the same degree. And now we're pretty blighted at this point because we've purified everybody by the time we can get this thing, except the Blight Lord. So this is a key component, gathering these stones and coming down here is a key component to being able to survive purifying the Blighted Lord with like our sisters. And it's a pretty cool battle. It's a pretty cool boss with like 2 parts. I think I didn't get the ending B. I got ending C, which is the good ending. Ending B, I don't know, because I was like, eh. But apparently in ending B, when you fight the Blight Lord, you end up teaming up with the Priestess of the Font to just like contain the blight forever together, but you're both like miserable and stuck there, so it doesn't really solve the problem. But this is where we learn about the Umbral Knight. He has a name. It's like Fyrus or something. It was confusing because they literally at some point someone says his name, and then you get on like the Wikia or whatever, and it's like they don't have a name, and I was like, they literally do. It's like, Why do you keep calling them they? It's clearly a guy, idiots. Anyway, it's some woke nonsense. But so we get his backstory, and we see that he's been around for a long fucking time, and that the ancients set this whole thing up, and the Umbral Knights protecting the priestesses and all this stuff were there to like protect the priestesses from like the invading army, which is like the king. And we find out there's like a world, and there's like different realms, and that this king came to this realm and had to deal with the ancients. And I guess there's like ancients other places, but he went on like a genocidal situation. But then once he kind of genocided most of them, then the blight hit, and then because he didn't realize that the ancients were essentially like keeping it at bay with the white priestesses. And so then he needed like an emergency like white priestess. But lucky for him, someone had like banged someone else and had like a kid. And so he was able to like utilize that, and then Faded made the clones to kind of like push things off even further, and we just kind of get more information all around at this juncture from like all the stuff we're reading in these like side rooms about people's relations to one another and how everything's like kind of played out. And so that's super interesting, super good stuff. So finally we can head all the way down in the abyss, and there's like a part here that's just like fuck you to get to the Blight Lord. And this is the part I was talking about. Like, damn, even with that mask and like all your healing magic, like this would be like a rough thing to get through. It's just like extremely long portion with like enemies and like the bomb things, and like you gotta swim through poison water and gas, and it's like non-stop, and every now and then you get like a tiny little break, presumably to heal with your prayers. But we finally get to the bottom, and we enter into this large room, and we run into the Priestess of the Font. But instead of being like this beautiful pure like hallucination or whatever we ran into up at the font, the pure water, this is like the true self. So like she looks like us in that she has like the blighted hair, like she's like black and red hair, and like her dress is jacked up, and she's like, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. This is for me and me alone. And you're like, nuh-uh, I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna purify you and take care of this. And she's like, no, you can't, you'll die just like me. And then she like freaks out, and then we find out she's a new Blighted Lord, right? So she's the Blighted Lord at this point, like Blighted Lord Part 2. And so then we battle her, and it's pretty epic. She's like this huge, crazy-looking thing in the middle of the screen, and she'll like summon guys sometimes, and she'll do all these big attacks, these sweeping paw attacks. And then like once we beat her and try to purify her, this is the part I think where the endings will differ. But on ending C, when you try to purify, you see all the images of like the dead white priestess girls like you, and they're all surround her, and then she like fights off the purification, but you survive because you have the amulet that protects you, and that you reconstructed. And then we continue the battle through Part 2, and at that point, once we beat her the second time, then it's like purifying time for sure. And then she's like, thank you so much, I can't believe you did this. You put me at rest, and you saved like everybody of the land or whatever. And it's like, because like, girl, everyone's dead. Fuck. So we purify her, and that's the end of the game. And then we get like an after credits scene, and we see Lily standing there, much older, like a teenager at least, because like Lily, the main character game, she looks like she might be like 10 at the most, but we're like, I'm thinking more like 7, 8. And then we see her as like at least a teenager, if not a young adult woman, and she's staring, and the Umbral Knight's speaking to her. So the Umbral Knight and her are still hanging out together, and I don't know what they're doing, but there's a sequel to this game coming out this year, I think, Ender Magnolias. I'd play it. Even though I wasn't a big fan of like the gameplay, when I eliminated the vast majority of the challenge in the gameplay, I thoroughly enjoyed this game and the story and all the stuff. And again, the boss fights were cool. I had no beef with them. I wasn't gonna like uncheat, make myself not God mode just to like fight them for a challenge, because I got a lot of shit to do, guys. I got a lot of games to play, but occasionally, if the game just like stopped making me invincible, which it would do as the Unreal Engine fought against the cheat engine for dominance, I would still be able to get through some of these boss battles, even taking damage. So that was fun. So yeah, that's Under Lilies. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I like the ending, this ending at least. The music was pretty good, pretty fantastic. I have one or two of these songs on like one of my playlists that I listen to on like a regular basis. So yeah, the music's pretty good. The graphics are pretty good. The game handles well. I had no issue. Like, I'm playing these like Princess Peach games and some of these older Mario games because my daughter's like into Mario these days. with her before she goes to bed, and like some of the jumping is like real janky. Like it's like, oh my god, how did I miss that? Or like, why am I sliding so much? And I'm not a big fan. I guess if you're like an old school purist, you're like, oh, this asshole, whatever. But this, with this, it's like I wanted to jump somewhere, and I was easily able to jump there. Power ups all make sense. The powers all have their use. The bad guys have like a pattern of play. I didn't feel like wasting my time interacting with them like constantly going back and forth between these levels. And I'm like, all right, I got to do this jumping dodge thing again. I got to like back off and like be real slow and like, and then run through and all this stuff. Like all this stuff, I'm like, meh. So that's to recommend. Yeah, I mean, if you like Blasphemous or Salt Sanctuary or anything like that, then this is definitely this is right up your alley. You would love this game. It's a great addition, I would say. If you're more into like the Castlevania Metroid side of things, where it's less stupid and punishing for no reason, then I would say yeah, but just know you're gonna be like not grinding per se, but there is some grinding. Like definitely when I'd go back to previous levels with like my new level ups and upgraded weaponry, and I would just kill things in one hit that were like causing me problems before. So there's definitely that aspect of it. Music's great. The boss fights are the real reason to be like playing this as a game, if you're not into story or whatever, because they were pretty good. Even all the mini bosses, all the main bosses, like that's some good stuff. And even occasionally there'd be rooms where I'd be like less frustrated with what was going on, because it was like things like came at you in like a reasonable cadence, and not just like, oh, here's 4 centaurs and you're locked in a room with them. Like what the fuck am I supposed to do here, game? Like fuck you. Or here's like 12 spiders or whatever. It's like, Jesus, man. Like this is not enjoyable. Like what is the fucking problem? Just like, let's ramp up the difficulty by just like throwing 6 more guys in here. Oh yeah, and the water's poison. Like, okay, thanks. This is a real skill-based situation. Like whatever, fuck you. So yeah, so I enjoyed it. I will probably check out Ender Magnolias when it comes out. I think it comes out later this year. I think I saw that on the Steam page. I was like, is there a sequel to this? I feel like there would be, because this game seems like it did pretty well. And yeah, there is. But that's Ender Lillies. I enjoyed it. As long as I was cheating, I enjoyed it. And yeah, it's pretty good. Well crafted and fun. Cool. Catch y'all later.